I got intro music. This is great. Wow. Also, spectroscopy, you nailed it. That was great. That was fantastic. Hello, everybody. So I'm Jasmine, as you just heard from my, introduction and introductory music. So I'm here to tell you about my journey with my team, which was tackling the fear of metrics and using them in a way that was psychologically safe, but also valuable not only for me as an engineering leader, but for my ICs as well. So to actually get this started, I have to give you a little bit of context about me. So I've been working for this company, Jellyfish, for quite a few years now, and I have been like knee-deep thinking about engineering efficiency, how to build tools that empower engineering leaders, what makes a productive team, how do you measure a productive team, how do you even see or identify one? Like, how do you actually see that? And over time, I've developed like an extreme level of comfort with development metrics, So as you see with my burnt, a bad hair job, when I was an IC, I was really comfortable talking about my own IC metrics. I was a team lead. I talked about my team metrics, or talking about company metrics. And this really helped me transition into my engineering manager role. It made me data oriented. I really understood how to measure success for my teams. I really understand how to align things with business priorities, but it also left me open to a blind spot, which was I definitely forgot how scary metrics can be. I forgot, when I first thought about this stuff, I remember the fear, behind these things. You're worried about being monitored, or you're worried about being judged or wrongfully assessed, right? And so, I hired some folks. We had a bunch of people we're bringing in, and I forgot about the assumptions that they're bringing in with them, right? So they're really amped about this product, but I totally jumped the gun. And so I went to utilize them myself, and I realized I made the mistake of not really creating the right foundations, and it didn't go as well as I expected. Now, there's no drama. I had trust with my team, so it wasn't like anything bad. But I definitely wanted to make sure we were leveraging the power of these metrics, because I really believe in them. And so I realized, I need to bring people with me. I needed to show them, I know this is valuable through my own experience, and I know it doesn't need to feel bad. And so how can I do this in a way that is effective, it aligns with my style, and it's also going to be comfortable and valuable for my team? So what I did was, propose a plan for what we do, together. That's the best way to do it, in my opinion. It's all right, well, let's remove all assumptions. Why don't we work on it together? So I started with one IC. I said, hey, I really believe in this. Why don't we figure out what the right way is and establish these things? And, if it doesn't work out, I'll throw the whole thing out the window, whatever. Let's not tie ourselves to the outcomes. And so we started some experiments. I started with one and multiple ICs. And then with the goal of actually figuring out how we can use these metrics. So I got 10 minutes, so we're gonna skip the whole experiment part and just talk about what worked. So if you could just imagine a montage of me with my team, experimenting, that would be great. So fast forward, maybe some handshakes and things like that, and we'll fast forward. So let's talk about what worked. So one of the things that worked, this might seem obvious, but leading with clear goals was very critical. You needed to be transparent, you needed to be intentional, and you needed to be clear. Both my ICs and me needed to align on how we were going to use these metrics and which ones we were going to use. And so, for example, when we set one of the goals, for me, I started to expand how many teams I was managing. And this was really hard. If you're a manager and you start managing more people, it's harder to know, what everyone's doing. And so I didn't want to sacrifice the quality of support and feedback that I had from my ICs. So I said, hey, I think if we utilize this, we can actually be able to do that. And so having that transparency of hey, this is the job I need to do. What do you think is the best way we can do this? And actually start the conversation there helped a lot. What else worked was being consistent and having tight feedback loops. When we introduced this into ceremonies, so our one-on-ones, we actually did this on a monthly cadence, ended up being the thing that worked. It gave us the opportunity to practice and get more comfortable. It just became a conversation that we have. It also avoided the manager pigeon scenario, right? Which is hey guys, so what's up with this metric? Why is this thing down or up? And it just freaks people out. You're I don't know with my manager. Are they freaking out about something? And maybe I'm just curious and they don't don't know the difference of the sentiment. And so this gave like a safe space for us to have these conversations. You knew what we were going to do, we knew we were going to have it, and it just was more effective. And just coupling this with feedback loops to make sure we're iterating and we're still getting the value. So another thing that worked was empowering the ICs to take the wheel. So I noticed higher success when ICs looked at metrics beforehand and they actually came with their own conclusions and their ideas for me. And I just sat there and kind of provided feedback and talked about things. So they bring me this rich conversation, and they also were in control. They were comfortable with this stuff, right? These things can feel highly personal, right? You're talking about your performance, your productivity, or maybe your mistakes or the things that you did well. And we're able to have this open and transparent conversation. So having that control for them really helps to just have a more productive conversation. And this, I could go on for so many things, but the last one I'll talk about is not limiting the conversations to individual metrics. I really believe that, productivity is largely influenced by its environment, right? So if your team is not doing really well, it's probably your IC is having some trouble too, right? So when you want to look at the team, you can actually see, hey, is there anything here that we want to improve, or is there anything we want to repeat, right? So if your team is doing anything great, how can we find those trends and make sure that we're doing those? And so this helped a lot too, where we can have these conversations about what's going on with the team, and I can actually prep them to have these conversations in such a way that they can bring it to their team and actually bring the improvements themselves, rather than being a manager like, hey, you guys should totally do this other thing. It's going to come way better coming from ICs than it will from me. So I got some cool stories, right? And I have lots, but I'm going to tell you a few of my favorites. So the first one is that metrics acted as an advocate. So this one is actually my favorite. I noticed for, we had this thing called recent allocation. So I can actually see for, a period of time, I could see what an IC was working on. And what was really important is that it gave this level of visibility, especially for people who maybe are not as good as advocates for themselves, or maybe they're forgetting things, or maybe they have a hard time expressing their wins. The metrics did it for them. I actually had an example where I noticed some advanced technical work for a single IC that I didn't realize they were doing. And this was just didn't come up. I thought they were doing these other things, and it really signaled, technical growth that maybe I wouldn't have seen or recognized, and I could push them in new directions. You can also notice, hey, this person put like a whole project on their back. And, you could probably get that through feedback loops from, around the team, but I got it right there in that second. It was just a quicker way to get there. One of my other favorites is addressing burnout, right? So we were actually able to establish some trends pretty early. So one example, and this one's one of my favorites, is I had some slight sentiment of overwhelm and frustration, but having a really hard time of figuring out where this was coming from. And the thing that I noticed was that productivity was super high for this person, but deliverables were also late, which is just a recipe for disaster, right? It's just a recipe for burnout. And so having these conversations, I could actually prove what is going on, and we can actually talk about setting reasonable expectations, be able to track that. I actually expect your metrics to go down. This is not your new normal, and this is how we can actually have the marathon and not the race. And we also have action items to go back to the team and then say, hey, this is what we need to do for the team to be better, more efficient, but also healthier all around, so that the team has some good dynamics and reach our deliverables, which is what makes everybody happy, right? And, lastly, there are so many goals that, ICs have. Maybe they want to, do more front-end work, or maybe they want to enter a new part of the code base. Maybe they're engaging in some PR paralysis. And so, they want to track improvements, hey, I'm going to try to work on my confidence in this area. I want to try to do this, or I'm having, issues here. And so we can actually track that over time. Is this PR cycle time getting better? And so this helps to make sure that we're holding these things accountable, or if something isn't improving over time, we can actually be there to support those improvements. And celebrate the wins. I'll be hey, remember you said you wanted to do front end? You've been doing that for 3 months. That's awesome. And so, if you fell asleep during this, which honestly is the end of the day, so like, that's what I'm going to do after. So, good luck with the nap. But I just want you to go take one thing away from this, which is if you thoughtfully use metrics and you collaborate with your ICs, you listen to them, you can unlock its value and you can move past the fear. And, I really think that developer metrics are a tool that extend your management style. And so if you do these things, everything's all good. And yeah, that's it, literally. So that's me. I'm Jasmine. That's metrics. Yeah.